Super fun fact, I have a P.O. box that you can send things to. And recently I got a fun and very cute package that had prints in it, stickers, and what I was most excited about, handmade paper. Look at these textures and colors. These are so much fun, and I've made art on handmade paper a handful of times, but I really wanted to get in there this time. So shout out to Dandelion Designs. Check them out on Etsy, support them. They mentioned in a very adorable letter that I won't be showing to be gentle with the erasing, which made me think, what can handmade paper handle? So I wanted to test it. I want to test crayons.
Of course, watercolor. Posca pens, gouache, normal pens,
and colored pencils. Don't sweat, Dani. It's gonna be a fun video. Let's see what we can do. I'm gonna start off with my usual Sakura Micron pens. These are my usual pens I like to use. And I was just curious how maybe the different sizes of the tip of the pen would affect or be affected by the handmade paper. The paper is really textured, and also it's a little bit more spongier feeling than a manufactured paper. So far it feels like paper. Moving up to our 08. It definitely feels different, obviously, because it is different. I think I'm really curious how much the paper can handle maybe being abused, like multiple strokes. Could get some fun textures with the paper too. So far, y'all, it's paper. Let's try a colored pencil next. Oh, okay, the paper is falling apart, so I do need to be a little gentle. Been a while since I've used crayon. Remember crayons? Year of the crayon? Posca pens are known to be rough on paper. So how does a handmade paper handle Posca pens? It's holding up pretty well. Copic markers. How does an ink behave on handmade paper? It's definitely very easy to get a dry brushing effect on this paper because the paper is so textured and thirsty. It's dry. I don't know how to describe it. Moving on to watercolor pens. Oh, you can get like a nice layer of like a dusting of the color. The test I'm really curious about, watercolor, because it's very wet. The paper is so thirsty, it absorbs the water immediately, so it might be hard to work with watercolor on something like this, but also it's drying slowly, so it actually might make it very easy to work with. And last but not least, we have gouache. It's really interesting. I honestly thought that working with a paper that wasn't professionally made would make it a little bit more harder to work with art materials, but kind of felt like it was really easy to work with it, though it is taking quite a while to dry. Usually it dries pretty quickly, but it's kind of vibing there for a while, huh? I was kind of hoping that this test would help me decide on what material to use on this paper, though I do like the watercolor. I want to see that texture and color through the paper, so we're probably going to stick with my usual watercolor. So let's create some illustrations. I absolutely love the textures and colors of these handmade papers. Look at this sort of cotton candy blue to pink, deep purpley violets, orange and yellow. And look at this. This looks exactly like space. What is happening? This looks like a sky. So I want to create 4 illustrations inspired by these colors and textures. Maybe one character throughout all 4 papers that have something inspired by each color, vibe. So I sat down with my iPad on Procreate and started to doodle, trying to think of something that I was really inspired to draw by the textures and colors of this handmade paper. That cotton candy pink to blue was perfection. I absolutely love the colors on that paper so much. And all I could think was this magical cotton candy sky with a unicorn, or I guess Pegasus, flying through it. Why not both? And I started to think, last week I drew dogs, so this week let's draw different varieties of horse and horse creatures. The first 3 horses, I really wasn't feeling inspired. Something the way I was drawing just felt boring. There wasn't enough silliness, so it was time to start really exaggerating those shapes and just boiling the horse down to a few. A circle, an oval, and another circle, and there you go. You got your horse. Stick some legs on it. We're done. The first horse I really started to love was was the horse with toes. And just look at that face. That horse, I don't even know what's happening. Something went wrong with that horse's face. I was definitely starting to feel the looseness and funness of doodling coming out. I guess I just needed a few warm-up horses and I got a few out. And look at that, I only liked 50% of my doodles. I mean, I don't hate the other ones, but you know, everyone has their favorites. Tag yourself, I'm the one that looks like it's dead inside. So let's start off with a basic horse, or at least what I kept telling myself was the normal basic horse. It's not. This is what originally was the horse with toes, I called it. I did decide to drop the toes. It was just a little bit too weird, and like I said, I wanted this to be the basic normal horse that we started with, but I just couldn't help myself, could I? Nope, this still ended up the horse with the weird cannon mouth. And if that wasn't weird enough, I just couldn't help myself even farther, and I gave this horse an extra 2 legs. All of that to say, I was taking inspiration from the less colorfulness of this paper compared to the others. This one is a very light yellow and orange paper, so I thought it would be perfect for a normal horse because it was nothing crazy. It was pretty basic. So I lined this horse with brown color pencil. Originally, after doing all of that testing, I was thinking I'm going to use this paper like I would any sort of watercolor illustration that I do, which meant using ink pens. But there was just so much texture and personality in this paper that I really wanted to embrace that. And I knew that colored pencils were going to do the job, and they really did, except this paper is very fragile and I definitely almost poked a hole in this paper and all of the others several times. I like to sharpen my pencil to the point of it being a weapon. So when I started to draw on this paper, the sharpness of it was picking up pieces and chunks of the paper and really digging in there. So I did struggle with that a little bit, but it just gives this illustration so much more personality. Imagine this exact same drawing, but on a normal manufactured from the store watercolor paper. I just feel like this is so much more fun. Look at all the textures, the crinkled edges, all of the flakes in the paper falling apart. And it makes this illustration actually sort of look like it was made on parchment paper. It looks really old. Everything's brown, hardly a hint of color. I look at this illustration and I absolutely love it. I don't know what it is. I'm in love with this horse. The one thing I wish I remembered to do was leave the part around its nose white. It just needs a little bit extra of a pop up there, and that would have been perfect, but I didn't think about it. Anyway, there is our first basic horse. Mostly basic. Moving on to our biggest inspiration, that cotton candy blue paper. It's so awesome. I don't know why I love it so much. I'm not really a pastel person. I don't think I am, but just this paper just hits the brain different. I don't know. So I went with my original Pegasus Doodle, and I don't think I changed a single thing for this guy. You might even notice it doesn't have a mane. Now, is that because I didn't want to cover up his little ears so hair would get in the way? Maybe. But also I think it's kind of funny to think about how a Pegasus might be more aerodynamic if it didn't have a huge flowing mane on its neck. Maybe, I don't know. Just think how smooth and fast it is. Creating more features to their design that allude towards their special ability, I think it's a lot of fun. Anyways, one thing I noticed when it came to drawing, especially like I mentioned with my sharp pencil, I could only draw in small strokes at a time, and having the pencil glide across the page where the, how do I describe it? The point is away and I'm sliding the pencil to where the point isn't going into the paper. A lot of sliding, no back and forthing. And when it came to erasing, I also had to be very careful. Break out your kneaded eraser because again, you don't want to slide your eraser across this paper. You probably don't want to use a back and forth block eraser. Definitely a kneaded eraser that you can pat on the paper. It does a really good job picking up the pencil, probably because it picks up a lot of paper particles with it. That was actually the number one thing that inspired the rest of the testing of art supplies on this paper. The note, it said, "Be gentle erasing." Poor Danny had no idea just how heavy-handed I am. This paper didn't stand a chance. I absolutely love the textures and the colors for these small doodles. I think it's amazing, but I don't know if I could see myself using paper like this in a larger scale. More layers, more textures, more details. I just don't think I have, personally, the patience to wait for something like this to dry, having to draw in small strokes and being very careful. I'm just a heavy-handed monster. I'm just going to destroy it. I can't be delicate to save my life. And that's it for our Pegasus. For our rosy, purpley, violety paper, I really liked the doodle of the horse I drew that was just really stocky, really thick, and had that long, thick neck. However, I was trying to keep all these illustrations horizontally horizontal. Don't ask why. I get really weird when I have a set of illustrations and they're not all horizontal or not all vertical. It's no good. What was I even talking about? The neck. I had to shorten the neck because I wanted this illustration to be more horizontal, but then I had all of this space behind this sort of square-shaped horse. And that's when I knew this little guy was going to be the perfect unicorn horse. Just put the longest horn you can, just fill up the page. Doesn't matter how long it is. Realistic? What's a realistic size unicorn horn? Unicorns don't even exist. You can't tell me what's too big for a horn. How dare you in the comments? I see you. How dare you? Anyway, I love this little guy. I just think of these really thick, sturdy, heavy horses in really small packages because they have to offset the huge amount of weight sticking off being half the size of their body length. As babies, I can imagine these huge horned horses just falling over all the time over the weight of their horn. Oh my God. I absolutely love drawing the dumbest unicorns. Unicorns are always supposed to be this mystical, magical, beautiful, elegant horse. Nope. Make it stupid. Make it fall over the weight of its own horn. Oh yeah, so I was trying to add some sort of watercolor element outside of painting the actual horse. Our normal horse had lines around it because it was just so surprised and silly. Our Pegasus had flying magic behind it. And the unicorn has drippy, gooey, nasty magic dripping off of the tip of it. I thought it was fun and silly, and I like to paint goopy things. And it filled up the space nicely over there. Well, I had other things I wanted to say about the paper, but I got super distracted talking about how stupid I like to draw unicorns. So I guess that's that for our unicorn drawing. One more to go. Our fourth and final horse creature is a hippocampus, but as I slowly exaggerated its shapes and forms, it went from a half horse, half mermaid creature to just part seahorse with a horse body and a mermaid tail, but sort of looks like a dragon. It's just all sorts of weird and creepy, but also that's sort of the spirit of water. Everything in the water's weird, y'all. I do love the design of this guy though. I think he's really creepy but really fun. I love the shapes. He's twisty, he's flowy. It's a good horse. The last notes I had about this paper is I was thinking about this small business art supply video I made, 3 years ago at this point? I remember testing paper back then, but I couldn't remember if it was for watercolor or not. So I went back and watched the video. It was not made for watercolor. As soon as I put my brush down on the paper, it just absorbed it like a paper towel would and the water just spread out. So that was just paper. And I went back and looked at the note, and Danny says specifically that this is actually watercolor paper. Which made me think, oh yeah, the paper wasn't absorbing the water like a paper towel. So then I just had to Google it, and I learned that watercolor paper is made specifically with a certain type of glue that helps the water not be absorbed in that way, which makes me realize just how little I know about making paper and just how cool this is. So thank you again so much to Danny for sending this paper. This was not at all a critique on your paper products. I have no idea what it's like to make paper. These are just observations I made as I used the paper and discovered how hard it is to make paper and how different art supplies works on a chunkier, more textured handmade paper. And also how working with such a delicate paper makes you work and think differently about your art, and you create fun, simple, cute doodle. I love these horses. These horses are the best. Just look at them. So thank you so much to Danny for sending me this really fun package in my P.O. box. And an even bigger thank you to my patrons for their monthly support. You guys are the best. If you want early access to these videos, secret sketches, live streams, and more, check out the link to my Patreon in the description. Also, I'll be having a Black Friday sale on my shop. Link in my shop down below. Next week there's a sale. Okay, bye. See you guys next time.